Remember in the Gen 8 games when this one Eevee kid rolled up to the battle tower and was like,
"I've waited 20 years for this day to come."
Yeah, I think we moved on from that a little too quick. Howdy do, trainers. Today, I must pose a very important question in dire need of a conclusive answer. Simply put, are Pokemon trainers getting too young for this shit? Cause I know Pokemon is a game that prides itself on fulfilling every child's dream of free roaming the country and forcing gods of unspeakable power to beat each other up for money, but realistically speaking, at what point can we just say that, yo, you are too young to be a Pokemon trainer? The answer to this, my friends, is that you can't. The Pokemon universe has always kind of pussyfooted over the issue of when a trainer is allowed to start going on a Pokemon journey, but that's not to say that they haven't tried before. Probably the most universal rule that the majority of fans seem to agree on is that you have to be 10 years old to get your Pokemon license. It might have something to do with the fact that in the very first episode of the Pokemon anime, our main man, Ash Ketchum, is like, "And now that I'm 10, I can finally get my Pokemon license." And since our impressionable young asses usually deferred to the anime to answer the stuff that we couldn't get from the games, this sort of just became an unwritten rule that we all ran with. Unfortunately, the anime is also infamous for pulling a lot of improbable bullshit back in the day, so using it as canonical evidence is short-sighted at best. For what it's worth though, the Pokemon manga does try to expand upon this, if only by a smidge. And no, I'm not talking about Pokemon Adventures, you Philistines. In the Electric Tale of Pikachu manga, there was a grand total of one panel which asserted that, in addition to having lived for one whole decade, prospective trainers must also attend a half-day training session before taking an exam that, if passed, will qualify you for a Pokemon license. And while it's an ambitious attempt at expanding a throwaway line, this series is also known for giving Misty the biggest titties since James from Team Rocket, so it really isn't the most reputable source for hard-hitting evidence. All that said, the whole trainer starts their journey at 10 years old rhetoric isn't completely without merit. Most of the protagonists all begin their stories at the ripe old age of totally ambiguous, but we do have two instances of canonical ages here. So apparently, those old cartridge boxes of the Pokemon Red and Blue releases included these neat pocket manuals about the game's overall world and story, as minuscule as there was. But they did have these little blurbs about the OG boys Red and Blue, which marked them with an official age of 11 spanking years old. Small victories, I suppose. But then fast forward to 2012 when the Black 2 and White 2 games came out. Along with that cool as fuck animated promo they released, there was also a press conference / fan meeting that took place. Exclusive to Japan, naturally. But according to a machine translation of a supposedly official blog, a Q&A segment actually answered the question of how old the homies Hilbert and Hilda were. As it turns out, 14 years old, which a lot of us kind of already figured. Now, I'm not sure why they bumped up the age, but I suppose it was part of a greater campaign to appeal to an older audience at the time. In any case, I do like the idea that each region sets its own age requirement for trainer certification that reflects upon the cultural standard of the IRL place the region is based off of. And that is a headcanon I would have been perfectly happy to just roll with. Unfortunately, that whole theory kind of fell apart when I remembered that during my first run at Pokemon White, my character locked battle eyes with one of the NPCs, and I was suddenly 2 seconds away from kicking the ass of somebody straight out of kindergarten. Then I realized that, oh wait, there are several, if not dozens of trainers in these games who are way younger than I was. Trainer classes have existed since the dawn of the franchise, and the amount of trainers who are barely old enough to cross the street have only increased with time. We've got your youngster classes, we've got your Poke Kid classes, the tubers, the students, the twins, all of which who own very real, potentially fully evolved Pokemon. So what does this all mean exactly? Are the games saying that any person with a pulse is allowed to own sapient monster creatures? Well, based on all the evidence that I have just so eloquently presented, I think the only answer to that is, yeah. In this world, you literally can't be too young to be a Pokemon trainer. Safety restrictions be damned. It's a crazy notion rife with terrible implications, but I guess humans in this world are just so self-sufficient that even toddlers can register to be a Pokemon trainer, even at the professional level. I mean, just look at the Pokemon League. Evidently, they have no qualms whatsoever about enlisting very small children into their ranks. Remember Tate and Liza from the Hoenn region? Yeah, of course you don't. But they are honest-to-God gym leaders of Moss Deep City, and they can't really be any older than like, what, 9 years old? And yet somehow they are qualified to run a whole-ass gym. Granted, their dad works at the Pokemon equivalent of NASA, so there could be a whole nepotism thing going on there. But honestly, that's all small potatoes compared to whatever the hell they're smoking here in Paldea. So we all know what the Elite Four is, right? A prestigious rank only allotted to the best of the best Pokemon trainers in the entire region. Acquiring such a title no doubt requires several years of training and studying that could only be earned by someone of truly outstanding aptitude. Guess who currently holds one of the seats? A literal elementary school kid who probably can't even reach up to your calves yet, who goes by the name of Poppy. Never mind the fact that she's confirmed to be 9 years old, but evidently, she was personally invited into the ranks by everybody's favorite champion, Gita. That's not a joke, by the way. She is your favorite. Anyway, I think it's safe to say that independent children are the backbone of the Pokemon battle economy. But even so, I feel like the anime and the manga were onto something when they adapted the idea of a minimum age requirement. Cause otherwise, why would they even bother including it at all? For my own sanity, I feel like some restriction has to be in place here, and after looking over what currently is and what isn't, I finally got a fan theory that'll fit into most of the canons. Basically, very young children can only train Pokemon if they enter a sponsorship program. Kinda like the whole Galar thing where the champions can endorse people to take on the gym challenge, but in this case, the way it would work is that an underage kid needs to get sponsored by a licensed trainer in order to handle Pokemon of their own. Like, you know how some places won't let you adopt a dog unless you're like 18, but you could still raise and take care of the family pet if you live in the same house as them? It's like that whole thing. I mean, if you look at the anime, there's a perfectly good example of this with the Lemon siblings. The little lemon, Bonnie, is too young to train her own Pokemon, so her big lemon brother Clement is the guy who captures one for her. She acquires a Dedenne this way, and even though she's the acting trainer who does all the grooming and feeding of the little rat, it is still technically Clement's Pokemon. Anyway, to make a long story short, there's nothing illegal about being an unsupervised minor and signing up to be a Pokemon trainer, so long as you have permission from a parent or guardian. Thank you for watching my presentation, and I will catch you all in the next one.